Today we're going to talk about all of the books that are at the top of my radar that are releasing in June. If there are any June releases that you're excited about that are not on my list, please be sure to let me know about them in the comments below, and also feel free to like and subscribe while you're down there, and let's get started. First up, there are several books that are releasing on June 2nd, so let's talk about those first. First up, we have Sublimation by Isabel J Kim, and this one is a science fiction slash horror novel that deals with doppelgangers. In this story, if you immigrate to a new country, when you get to the border, you split into two. One of you gets to go into the new country and one of you has to stay behind at home. So this is really an examination of what you're willing to give up in order to start a new life. And up next, we have another genre-bending story that is The Children by Melissa Albert. This one is a blend of fantasy and horror. In this story, we are following adult siblings who, when they were children, their mom was a fantasy writer and she wrote them into her fantasy series. And so these kids were kind of leading a dual life of their reality and the one where they were starring in their mother's work. And she has since passed, and now these children as adults are maybe being called back to the other half of their childhood that came from their mother's imagination. Up next, we have Land by Maggie O'Farrell. I have not read Maggie O'Farrell before. I know that Hamnet was really popular. What has me interested in this book is there's supposed to be an element of buried treasure. In this, one of our characters is mapping out Ireland. Since it's by Maggie O'Farrell, I expect it to be an epic, beautifully written book, but I also have a great love for buried treasure stories, pirate stories, that type of adventure, and so I'm hoping to get a chance to read this one because I feel like it's going to be a wonderful literary fiction, historical fiction in its own right, but also having the buried treasure aspect. I think it's also going to fall in line with the type of books that I prefer to pick up. Another author that I've never read is Ann Patchett, and her books always seem very intriguing to me. If you have read her and have a favorite, please let me know your recommendation. She does have a book coming out June 2nd, and that is called Whistler. And this book follows a grown woman and her former stepfather who reunite later in life, and I believe it's a story of the two of them looking back on their lives and the choices they made. And it's another one that I am going to be looking out for and keeping on my radar because I believe that Ann Patchett is a wonderful writer, and this may be the place that I start with her. The next book that is on my radar is purely due to the unicorn aspect, and that is The Unicorn Hunters by Katherine Arden. I must confess I have DNF'd Katherine Arden twice before, once with The Bear and the Nightingale and another time with Small Spaces. So for whatever reason, this beloved author has not worked for me in the past, but I grew up in the 80s loving unicorns, and this just looks and feels like it's right up my alley. The only thing I know about the Unicorn Hunters is our main character goes deep into the forest and a unicorn appears and falls at her feet. This is supposed to be a very enchanting story, and I'm really looking forward to giving Katherine Arden another try. Perhaps I'll go back and give her other works a try if this one works for me. I'm really excited about checking out The Unicorn Hunters. And then up next we have Muneca by Cynthia Gomez. This is a queer Gothic horror novel that is set in the 60s, and this is also Cynthia Gomez's debut novel. From what I understand, this book is also a witchy book. One of our two main characters has dabbled in witchcraft, and the other one falls to an illness. They are also falling in love with one another, so one of them has to work to save the other. Again, it's a debut novel, so I'm really excited to check out new horror from a new author, Cynthia Gomez, with Muneca. And that was the last book releasing on June 2nd. For June 9th, I only have one book on my list, and that is Our Sister's Keeper by Jasmine Holmes. This is a very intriguing horror novel that is set in Mississippi in the 1920s. Our two main characters are a woman and her husband who move to a wealthy, all-free black town where they plan to live out all of their dreams. But this town isn't as perfect as they think it is. There are women there who have a special ability to pull the trauma out of men, which is supposed to make for a very gripping, nightmarish story. So I'm very interested in reading Our Sister's Keeper. It's also supposed to be a Gothic psychological horror, so it sounds like something right up my alley. And then releasing on June 16th, we have A Prince Among Pirates by Katie Abdou. As I mentioned earlier, I love all things pirates, so this one is definitely on my list. This is a queer fantasy romance, and I'm hoping it is as charming as I think it will be. This next book sounds so cute. It is releasing June 18th, and that is If Books Could Kill by Kate Eberly. And in this one, our main character makes a wish that she can live in her favorite author's next book. But the twist is her favorite author isn't writing a romance, she's writing a thriller. So our main character has to live through this thriller novel, and it just sounds like such a good time. That is If Books Could Kill by Kate Eberly. And then up next, releasing on June 23rd, we have a book by one of my favorite authors, Adrian Tchaikovsky, and that is Green City Wars. Thank you very much to Tor for sending this to me. I will obviously be reading this one in June. This is another genre mashup, as Adrian Tchaikovsky does so well. And in this, our characters are all talking animals, and it's more of a noir mystery type of science fiction fantasy where all of these characters are living in a city underneath the humans. And I believe the main character that we're following is a raccoon who is also a private investigator, and I'm just really looking forward to what Adrian Tchaikovsky is giving us next. Also releasing on June 23rd is The Tinder Box by M.R. Carey, and this one almost went under the radar for me. M.R. Carey is my favorite currently publishing author, and I only just found out about this book recently. So if you haven't heard of this one yet, please be sure to put this one on your list. M.R. Carey has such an incredible way of changing his authorial voice and his tone to the specific book that he's writing, and I just find that so incredible. He also writes across so many genres, and this one is more of a historical fiction fantasy, which is really what I expected to get out of Once Was Willem, but there was a lot of horror in Once Was Willem. If you enjoy horror, I highly recommend you read Once Was Willem. It was my favorite book of last year, but I digress. In the Tinder Box, we have a character that is another witchy type character, and to her luck, a demon falls from the sky, and he has a magic tinderbox on his body, and apparently there is great power that will grant wishes in this tinderbox, and it falls into the hands of someone who is already a witch. So I'm really hoping that this explores the good and evil, light and dark, and I could not be more excited to have this book coming out from M.R. Carey in June. And then on June 30th, we have our third witchy book of the list, and that is The Witch Season by Julia Bianco. So our main witch character in The Witch Season has a job of bringing witches who are not yet aware of their powers into the coven before they have a catastrophic event that unveils their power. So she's kind of in charge of keeping the witchy society under control and in check. And apparently she runs into an unsettled witch who is way too powerful for her to wrangle in. This one also has a strong element of romance as well. And those are all the books that I have on my radar for June. Like I said, please let me know if there are any other books you're excited about. Let me know which of these you are most excited to pick up in June, and I will talk to you later.